Hi everyone, how are you today? I hope you are all well. So for this video discussion, we will be discussing human population, which encompasses the first unit learning outcome for the coverage of our upcoming second examination. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our objectives for this session. So the first objective is to trace the history of the human population growth and summarize the different perspectives on population growth. What is population growth? What is demographic transition? What is demography? And what is population stability, as well as any other parameters that talks about the population stability. Second objective is to explain the human population growth and its impact on the environment and biodiversity. So first, let's define what is population. So it is already a fact on how we define population, and based on the definition of the population itself, it refers to a group of individuals of the same species living in the same locality or interbreeding, capable of interbreeding and sharing genetic information. Now take notes of the highlighted words. We have the same species, the same location, capable of interbreeding. So to give the details or justification of the definition for the population, we have here the attached photos or pictures of an example for a population. So picture number one, we have a population of a human being. Tayo po ito. Second picture, we have the population of a plant. This is an example of a corn in a cornfield. And lastly, we have the dog as representative for the animal. So basically, based on the definition, the same species of human being, the same species of plants, the same species of animals, the same location, the same locality, and they are capable of interbreeding with each other, sharing their genetic information. So with regards to capable of interbreeding, since we included here the plants itself, the plants, it does not only limit the sexual reproduction as well as the asexual reproduction concept. Further, human population, in addition to our first definition, it refers to the number of people living in particular area, either it could be specific or broad general, the world as a whole. So according to the United Nations studies for the human population as of November 15, 2022, we already reached 8 billion number of population as the total, and they project and we expected, according to demographers based on statistics, that by the year 2037 we will reach 9 billion, and in the year 2058 we will reach 10 billion population. Now, talking about the human population, we need also to consider this concept, which is known as the population dynamics. And dynamics, by the word itself, you might be familiar with this word already. It connotes changes. So basically, taken together, population dynamics, population change. And by definition, population dynamics states that this is a general study of population changes over time. So in this case, as attached here in my PowerPoint presentation, I give the deer population as an example, in which the graph itself shows the red line represents the population size of the deer, and then we have the blue line which represents the quality of the deer. It could be the characteristics of the deer, the color, um what the size, the weight, whatever it is, as long as it connotes the characteristics of the deer itself. And then we also have the blue one, which, yeah, the green one, which represents the deer production, and deer production represents the birth rate. And the horizontal, the lower portion of the graph, represents the time over time, the years. Okay. And additionally, since we are already in the population dynamics, we also have this concept of demography. Okay, dynamics, demography, and then we have demographers. These are the individuals who studied population changes. And so demography is being defined. This is statistical study of human populations and those who study the human populations. It is also known as the demographic parameters here. It is used as to measure statistical data to objectively study the population. Objective meaning to say you are objective to study the human population, therefore you should have the parameters how to study them. And in this case, most likely we are referring to these parameters. We have the birth rate, the death rate, and then we also have the migrations. And when we say migrations, it refers to the concepts of moving in and moving out in a specific country. So basically, we're referring to the concept of immigrations and the immigrations, which of course they added to that could affect to the number of the population, either decrease or increase. So here it connotes the what I'm sorry, we have the quantitative study of the human populations. Quantitative because we are dealing with the numbers here, the number of birth rate, the number of death rate, and then the number of the people who move in and out of specific countries, say for instance in the Philippines. Now, there are some factors that we need also to consider in order for us to come up with the statistics of the human population. And these are as follows. We have the population size or the abundance. We have the density. We have the age structure. We have the birth rate, which represents the fecundity. We have the death rate, or also known as the mortality. And lastly, we have the sex ratio. So we are dealing or we are talking here for the sex ratio between the female and the male population. So let's start with the human population size or the abundance. When we say size, technically and basically, we are just referring to the number of the individuals. All we need to do is just to count the number of individuals per species. So here, say for instance, in this example, we have the population of fishes. And the population size or the abundance itself represents the number of individual fish we can see in this picture. So here, if you wanted to count its individuals represented in this picture, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 fishes all in all that represents the population of fishes. And of course, we will not stop by knowing the population size. Next, we need to know the population density. And population density correlates the concept of the population size or the population abundance with regards to the unit area or volume. Since we need to give the justification of the definition for the population, di ba kanina, we define population as a group of individuals in the same species living in the same locality or the same area, the same location. This is now the per unit area or the volume. So, as being defined, population density refers to the average number of individuals in a population per unit of area or volume. So, say for instance, we have here as an example a population of 100 insects that live in an area of 100 square meters has a density of one insect per square meter. By the way, I did not include because of course that's not your concern. But anyway, just for an information, add on information. When we get the population density, we follow this equation and this is constant. Population density is equivalent to the number of population divided by the total number of land area. And here so we have 100 insects as a population divided by the total number of area, which is 100 square meters. So therefore, we could say that in population density, one insect live in per square meter. Okay. Now, second example. So if the same population lives in an area of only 1 square meter, if the same population lives in an area of 1 square meter, what is its density? So again, density is equivalent to the number of population divided by the land area. The same population, meaning to say the same 100 insects, but in this case, only 1 square meter and not 100 square meter as given as an example in our example number one. So the question here is what is its density? You do the math. 100 divided by 1. I think that's 0.001. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now the question is which density is more crowded? So of course, we know the fact, you do the math already. The second example is most crowded or yeah, most crowded in comparison to the first example, in which 1 insect per square meter. The second example, lesser than that. Now, how does the population are being distributed in the environment? So we are already talking about the ecology here. For us, biology students, we are dealing with this, how this population are distributed in specific area or location. Since we know already the number of population, we computed it already in response to the unit area per volume or volume. And now we need to know how these organisms or the population, a group of organisms, thrive or distributed in an area. And here, there are three classification. Number one, we have clump. Second, we have random. And third, we have uniform. In this case, if we do this in what in reality, we do computations here. We do the stats. We compute it before we come up with this distribution, before we come up with our conclusion that, okay, the population are distributed in clump manner, or okay, the population are distributed in random or in uniform manner. But first things first, we need to define them. So clump, of course, I think you know how do you define clump? Okay, clump is clumping and they can be found everywhere as long as they are together. Okay, as represented here by the white circle or white dots. Random could be found everywhere, and uniform meaning to say they are distributed in the area in uniform manner. Okay, so let's say for instance, as what we have as our example, our previous example, 1 insect per 1 square meter. That's uniform distribution. And in the right side, these are the examples of an animals in which naturally they are how they are being distributed in the environment. So say for instance, we have the population of elephant. So the elephant are distributed in a clump manner because they always grow together by group. Okay, so this is one clump, two clump, second clump, the third clump, fourth clump, and so on and so forth. We also have the uniform, though this is not common, but yeah, this is being used in order for an organisms to address the scarcity of the resources, be it in their food, their nutrients, the water itself, the location in which they are thriving. So they are uniformly distributed in specific area or location. And when I say random, you can find them everywhere because they are in nature, they are distributed randomly. Okay. Next, we have the birth rate, the death rate, and the sex ratio. So in this case, we have here the age group. This is the population in millions. The blue one represents the male and the pink one represents the female. And this is based on statistics in the Philippine population as of 2018. And of course, you can see the pyramid, right? Simply because it connotes that there are many people born during this time, of course, 0 to 4 years old. However, as time goes by, as years goes by, as their age grow in number, of course, the number of the population decreases, and there are many external factors that we need to consider, be it external or internal. It could be their genetic factors, it could be their environmental factors, and so on and so forth. But anyhow, what we are trying to present here is that the number of population, this is the ratio of the male and the female in the Philippines as of 2018, that it lessens the number of population for both sex lessens as the years grow higher, as you grow older. And we also have here the number of birth rate and death rate per year in the entire world. So in the year 1950 down to 2100, which is the expectation we expect, um according to the statistics, of course, the computation of the demographers. So as of this moment, we are still here in the year 2020, and the number of the population is quite high compared to the death rate. The second picture with the concept of the birth rate, death rate, and sex ratio, we have here the bar graph in which it represents the number of years, the expected, no, not the expected since it's done already. In the year 2000, 2007, we have 2010, and then 2015. The number of population in millions, and these are their status. So we have single, we have married, we have widowed, we have divorced or separated, live in or common law, and unknown. Unknown meaning to say these are those individuals who opted not to say, or they don't have um their status are complicated. Either they are single, married, whatever. And additionally, according to research and studies, of course, this is also included in what in our subjects in biological sciences subjects, that in every 1 second, 4 or 5 children are born, and two of them died. So we have this what do you call that ratio of 4 or 5 is to 2. And with that, roughly the net gain is 2.5 more humans per second. So imagine per second, um, there is there are 2.4 individuals are being added to our population. So it's not really a surprise already that in the year 2058, as I presented in my previous slides, we will reach the total number of 10 billion population in the entire world because of this ratio. And going back to the history of the human population, how do we come up with the figures that what we have nowadays? So this is during the agricultural revolutions. Of course, when we say agriculture, more on planting, more on livestock during this time. And in different age, we have the old stone, the new stone, the bronze, the iron, the middle age, until we come up with the modern times. And this is the years from 8,000 BC before Christ up to AD 2000. Now notice here the changes since I don't know if you can see this one. Yeah, so we are moving forward already in industrial revolution. Industrial revolution meaning to say we already embrace the technological era. That's why the more the people live comfortably, the more the technology helps us live comfortably, address the needs of the people, the more we increase in numbers in comparison to the ancient times. And here, this one, okay, if you've noticed, there's a hole, a shallow, there's a shift of the number of the population simply because during this time the population during this time experience a plague. So plague represents a disease in which it kills millions, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, millions of population. So in this case, for the history, it only shows how the number of the population increases through times. And here from 1000 to 2000 AD, there is already a significant increase of the population, a rapid population growth. And also, in this table, it shows the world population growth that doubles in time. So we have the date here, the number of the population, and they double in what specific time. So say for instance, in 5000 BC, number of population is 500 million. And then in 800 BC, we have 100 million. So all you need to do is to subtract, of course, 5,000 less than 800. So it doubles from 50 to 100 million within the span of 4,200 years. I think this is quite a big numbers already in comparison to what I've showed you in the statistics according to the world meter demographers according to the statistics by as expected by the demographers that we will increase in that specific amount of or number of people within just a short period of time, because during the ancient time, the number, say we have here the population is 15 million and then double to 100 million, but it took them 4,200 years to double that population. So same goes with all of these figures that represented in this table. So we have here from 800 BC to 200 BC, so 100 million to 200 million. So it only took them 600 years to double this population, and so on and so forth. And then we also have this one, the demographic transition. So demographic transition as being defined, this is a three-stage pattern of change and birth rate and death rate during the industrial and economic development of the Western nations. So there are changes simply because again, during this time for the industrial, we brace already technology. We are our perspective as a human being do not dwell on just making babies, but we are more on work, we are more on productivity. We wanted to produce more for the comfort of everybody, for the improvement of the society, and so on and so forth. So many reasons are included, and of course, we need to consider also that contraceptives are already introduced, slowly introduced to the society. And because of that one, in demographic transition, it led to a decline population growth because of this industrial and economic development. Now, to further understand this concept of demographic transition, let me show you this um, diagram. Okay, so here in this portion, the left side, it represents the birth rate and the death rate, and in the lower portion, we have the different stages. The green one represents the death rate, the birth rate. I'm sorry. The red one represents the death rate, and the blue one represents the total number of population. Of course, the total number of population would be affected, would be greatly affected because of the two factors. We have the death rate and the birth rate. So let's start with there are stages in demographic transition. So for stage number one, we have the birth rate and the death rate are quite high, of course. So for the total number of population, so it is stable or slow and increase simply because the number of the population or the number of birth rate are almost the same with the number of birth rate. So just a little small number of individuals are added into the population. That is why in the population pyramid, it shows like this one as represented. And stage two, the birth rate is quite high. However, the death rate slowly declining already. Since in this case, I believe contraceptives are introduced already, more on medical equipment. So not everybody, once you get sick, you cannot easily die because of the advent of technology. Of course, you can be treated in the hospitals and so on and so forth. So in this case, since the birth rate is quite high and the death rate is quite low, there is a rapid increase of the number of population, in which this is represented by this diagram or picture of population pyramid. And stage three, the birth rate and the death rate are slowly falling already. By the way, I'm sorry for the stage 2, no, kasi birth rate, dito pala mag-introduce yung mga contraceptives for the birth rate. Now, since they are already starting to fall down, so the number of the population also increase slowly, okay, as represented here in this population pyramid. If you've noticed, there's no what it stopped already here in this pyramid representation, since there's no birth rate is added in here. In stage 4, there is already a low in terms of birth rate and death rate, so falling, and then stability for the population. And stage 5, there is already the probability projection of the demographers, what will happen in the next years to come. The death rate, we have low, and for the number of the population, there is already a little change. Now, in addition to the diagram that I showed you earlier, we have here also the representation. If you might find it quite confusing for this one, we have this one as another representation for demographic transition model. The red one represents the total number of population, just the same concept with the one that I presented, but this one is less on colors, less on, there's no definition for the birth rate, the death rate, as well as the population sizes. The green one represents the birth rate, the blue one represents the death rate, the red one represents the total number of populations. In stage 1, poor healthcare, children take care of parents, no contraceptives are available. So if there's an increase of the birth rate, there's also an increase of death rate. So the number of population is just quite not really that high. In stage 2, there is already an increase in quality of healthcare. So if somebody would get sick, they will not easily die. More hospitals, more vaccinations, and better doctors in the field of medicines. In stage 3, the birth rate is slowly moving downward already, since people need fewer children. The girls get an education already, in which it improves already their perspectives in life, that they also have other rules, rather than being a mother and staying at home. And at the same time, contraceptives are also introduced in this one. Okay. And so on and so forth until it reaches in stage 5. Now, with regards to the increase of the population growth, we also have this concept of longevity. Now, longevity is being defined as a maximum lifetime that is genetically determined, a maximum possible age to which an individual of a species can live. So, meaning to say, this is how long you live as a living organism. Of course, we need to accept, whether you accept it or not, nothing lasts forever. Even ourselves will not last forever. So we will die. And our maximum lifetime on how we stay on planet Earth represents our longevity. And also, with regards to the concept of longevity, we need to brace this concept of life expectancy. So this is now the average of the numbers of individuals that can expect to be given in the individual's present age. So most likely in life expectancy, based on statistics, it always represents per country. So say for instance, what's the life expectancy in the Philippines, the life expectancy in Japan, the life expectancy in Germany, since we are talking about here the average. So I think in the Philippines, 70 plus, yeah, 74, 75. Correct me if I'm wrong, you can Google that one. But yeah, so anyhow, so life expectancy, this is the average. For longevity, this is the average or maximum lifetime per individual. So say for instance, maybe your grandmother or grandfather live up to 100 years, so the longevity is 100 years. However, for the life expectancy, this is now the average for all individuals who live in a specific country. Okay, so yeah, this is the one that I've mentioned. So top 10 countries with high life expectancy, we have Hong Kong, Japan, Macau, Switzerland, Singapore, Italy, Spain, Australia, Channel Island, and we have Iceland as the top 10. So you might be asking, what are the considerations, or what are the things, what are the factors that could help them achieve higher life expectancy? Because of course, high life expectancy, meaning to say those individuals who live in that specific area live longer in comparison to other individuals in other countries. So there are so many factors that we need to consider, either genetics, of course, because of what, yeah, the genes of those individuals who live in that specific area or location. And then we also need to consider the external factors, the environment, their lifestyle, how advanced their what, technology with regards to treating their sick individuals, and so on and so forth. And yes, for the human population growth, that refers to the rise of the number of population in the planet Earth, in which the energy, the food, the water, and medical care are more accessible and dependable as the result of innovation and industrialization. There, it could considered as a positive, at the same time negative effect on the planet Earth. Now, the population growth has a significant impact on the planet ecosystem and the climate, because, of course, as the population grow, we also extract natural resources in the environment, since we are using them, and those natural resources are being processed, since they are considered as the raw materials in order for us to come up with a specific product. Say for instance, we have technology, so this technology helps individual of the society to live their life to the fullest, to live their life comfortably while living in the planet Earth. Technological and societal innovation will be necessary in supporting the human population with the minimal climate and environmental changes. So basically, if you try to observe also in the University of Mindanao, we do change our mission as well as our vision, and we are already moving towards sustainability. Okay, and I believe all of, even for the private and public organizations, we are moving to what they call this one, we are moving to sustainability, wherein we use the natural resources, at the same time we give back to our environment, and we use the natural resources without destructing the planet Earth, or our um mother nature. Now, there are some factors in which it limits the population growth per year. So there are three categories as being what classified and being defined. So the first one, we have the short term. Okay. Now, short term refers to the disruption of food distribution in a country, commonly caused by drought or a shortage of energy for transporting food. It could be hours, it could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months, or it could be a year. However, most likely it could only last for months. Let's say, for instance, we have drought. It can only last for 5 months, 3 months. Okay, but anyhow, the concept here is just short, in which, because of this one, it could lead to the decline on the number of the population, because again, we are very dependent to what, to the natural resources in order for us to live and survive. The second one, we have the intermediate term. So this is in between. Okay, maybe 5 to 10 years, or yeah, 10 years is too long already. The term includes the dispersal of a certain biochemical pollutants and disruption in non-renewable resources. We are still the doers here as a human population. This is the consequences of human population. Transportation of the machinery, the decrease in the supply of the firewood for heating and for cooking. And lastly, we have the long term. Long term meaning to say it will last for how many years. So factors include soil erosion, a decline in groundwater, and groundwater supplies, and we have climate change. Okay. Now, with regards to the concept of the population growth, the number of individuals that could thrive in the planet Earth, we need also to be familiarized with the concept of carrying capacity. So, carrying capacity of the planet Earth is being defined as the species average population size in a particular habitat. So, imagine this is just the basic concept. Imagine if you wanted, if you go to a buffet area and then you only bring one plate and then there's a lot of food that you wanted to taste, but the question is, does that food that you can see in the buffet, well, can you get all of those food with your one, with a single plate only? So the answer is no. So same goes with the concept of carrying capacity of the planet Earth. The carrying capacity of the planet Earth, I believe, according to studies, it can only what serve up to 8 to 9 billion of population. Now the thing is, if the number of the population, or the individuals of the in the population would keep on increasing because of this concept of rapid population growth, time will come that the planet Earth could no longer suffice, could no longer provide the needs of everybody. Okay? So the species population size is being limited by the environmental factors such as the adequate food, shelter, water, as well as mates. And actually, if you might be watching a lot of videos already in documentary videos in Africa, you can see a lot of people, a lot of individual, a lot of family there who are striving every day in order for them to survive. Why? There's no adequate food, there's no adequate shelter, as well as the water for them. Okay, so that's one of the problem. So maybe you might not realize that as of this moment simply because you're living comfortably at your comfort in your houses. But sooner or later, we will experience this one wherein there's no adequate food, shelter, and water that will be provided to everybody, even the oxygen that we are breathing. Okay. So if these needs are not met, therefore the population will decrease until the resources are being recreated. So say for instance, we have in Ireland, there is a potato famine. And we know that in other countries, the potato are their staple food. For us, for Southeast Asian, or Southeast Asian countries, our staple food are rice. For them, their staple food are potatoes. So if there's a scarcity of potatoes, what will happen to these individuals, um, especially for those low income family? What will happen to them? Now, so since we know, and we know already the concept that the human population keep on increasing per year. So here's now the effect of human explosion on the Earth ecosystem. So number one, there is already an increase in the number of environmental resources to be extracted. Okay, so of course, so since the number of the population keep on increasing and those individuals have their own needs as part of the society, so the more we wanted to give more or to address the needs of every individual, the more we extract natural resources from our environment. Thus increases the number as stipulated in the first definition for the effects of human expansion in the earth system. The second one, there is already an increased use of fossil fuels to produce electricity, fuel industrial processes, and power transportation. You can stop as of this moment and observe your surroundings. Okay, everything is being powered by electricity. Your laptop, your phones, the air conditioning unit that you have in your room, what your television, and so on and so forth, they are being run by electricity. What about for the fuels? Of course, when you travel from your home, from your house to you need to commute, or if you have your car with you. But then the bottom line is you need fuel in order for this vehicle to run. Okay. So we uses fossil fuels and increase in the use of fresh water for industrial activities, agricultural, recreation, as well as drinking. We need to accept the fact that everything or what we are doing as part of our daily activities, we need water. Even our body itself, we need water to suffice our daily activities. Um, we need that. Okay, even ourselves. So in this case, of course, all activities we need fresh waters, and don't forget that the percentage of water is quite low in comparison to the percentage of the salt water. So if everybody are needing, we are needing or we need fresh water, what will happen to the future? So yeah, the percentage of the fresh water are slowly declining. Plus, of course, due to anthropological activities, we keep on throwing, we polluted already our bodies of water. We keep on throwing our garbages everywhere. So here, this is an example of a fossil fuels in which, through time, these are the living organisms, part of our biomass. They are being processed in order to convert these three byproducts. We have the coke, the petroleum, and the natural gas, along with their compositions. This is the composition for natural gas, for petroleum, and for the coal. Another, in addition to the effects of the expansion for the human population in the Earth ecosystem. So we have the increase of environmental effects for ecology. Specifically, we have the urbanizations. Urbanizations meaning to say we are already converting our area from agricultural to commercialization simply because more population, more into business, we are more into building infrastructures. And this is what is happening right now in our surroundings. Fishing and hunting are being increased, which reduce the number of or reducing the number of the exploited species. So in this case, fishing and hunting more likely a hobby, but for some, especially for the farmers, for fishermen, this will serve as their what a form of livelihood in order for them to survive. Increase in the spread of invasive species. Invasive species are not good. When you are going to introduce this one a specific area or location, they tend to kill other organisms, those what native species that are living in that area. So it's not good. It always what lessen the productivity rate of that specific ecosystem. And of course, since the number of population keep on increasing, the spread of illnesses are inevitable. So say for instance in the concept of COVID-19, so it was advised before that even in the household we need to wear face masks, especially for those household that their space is quite smaller, not too spacious, meaning to say every now and then the family members will meet from time to time. So here, before this is one of the government agencies in which it lift the close in the season in Davao Gold simply because they wanted to allow those fishes or any other organisms to restore what they had or what they have. It's not always in the concept of getting natural resources in order for us to survive. The question is, what about for those other living organisms? How can they survive? Because if we keep on getting the natural resources from the environment without allowing them to heal, without allowing them to reproduce more, so in the future, maybe these organisms will be extinct. Okay. So as cited here, according to Miliana, so one of the measures ni para katuyuan nato nga tagaan nato og time ang ato mga spawner para maka-spawn off sila dili lang kay sige lang ta og kuha. Unya di nato taga time para pod mo daghan. So our intention is to give our time to spawners that they can spawn. It's not only having or just having to fish all the time. We give them time to reproduce. Okay. because nothing is forever. And in the context of the invasive species, we have two. Actually, there are more. There are so many invasive species, but there are only two which I included here in my PowerPoint presentation. So the first one, we have this giant earthworm or the mystery worm with the scientific name of Peritema species and the Metaphyre species, in which they what destroy the Manawi rice terraces by burrowing holes in which when they create the holes in the soil, it causes a water stress and encouraging the growth of the weeds. So it's not good if you're a farmer and then you're planting a rice in the rice field, and then here comes the weeds as the invasive species. Yes, weeds are considered as invasive species because it always lessens the productivity. Say, for instance, for the rice fields, they always compete with all of the natural resources in the nearby um, plant species. So, say for instance, they are competing for the sunlight, the nutrients from the soil, the water, and so on and so forth. Another invasive species, this one, we have the Lantana camara as the scientific name. This is locally known as kanding-kanding, now in vernacular for Cebuano. So this is a large leaf lantana which was introduced as ornamental due to its colorful flowers. It's very colorful. It's so good to see these plants. However, these plants or these species are considered as undesirable simply because it invades the pastures and it always decreases the productivity, which makes what they call that, which could lead to decrease in biodiversity. Decrease in biodiversity simply because it compete and does not allow other living or other plants to survive in that specific location. Now, there are some laws which is related to the introduction of species. In some references, invasive species are also known as the alien species. Alien species simply because they are not a common inhabitant in that specific area. It just so happened that they are being introduced in that area and they are competing and they somehow compete and then thrive off already those native species. So in this case, we have the Plant Quarantine Service, legal authority regulating the quarantine pests, which is provided by Presidential Decree number 1433, which is known as the Plant Quarantine Law of 1978, in which it regulates the entry of plants, the plant products, and the animals that may harbor pests or cause harm to agricultural products. In the Philippines, we do have this one, but it's not quite strict in comparison to other countries. Kasi in other countries, not all plants are they do not allow plants to be introduced in their country. So, kailangan pa siya ang mga information, thorough, or comprehensive screening. And then we also have this Philippine Fisheries Code of 1988, which is also known as the Republic Act of 8550, which tasks the Department of Agriculture through the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or also known as the BFAR, with the quarantine, the control, and monitoring of any foreign aquatic ecosystem or not ecosystem species prior to the introduction in the ecosystem, our ecosystem, to make sure if these organisms, both the plants and the animals, were not lessen the productivity rate of those native species in the specific area or location. So in summary, we did trace already the history of the population growth and summarize the different perspective of population growth, the demographic transition, and the population stability by showing the demographic demographic transition model, and the sex ratio between the male and the female. And I also explained the human population growth and its impact on the environment and biodiversity, specifically in the context of the invasive species. So I think that's it for today's discussion. See you again next time. Bye, everybody.